Hey everyone, so today I would like to talk to you about the new Big Wasp cartridges, which are these right here. This is 5th generation Big Wasp. It's their latest iteration of their cartridge and it is a completely new design. And so before we look at that, let's take a look at the ones that came before it. So I've been using Big Wasp since their 1st generation, and it's a product that I really love. They do have a lower price point, but not that much lower compared to some of the other big brands. They are, I would say, definitely an affordable cartridge without being a cheap cartridge. And one of the things that I really like about them is that they are available on Amazon, which is so important if you are finding yourself in a rut, because with Amazon Prime, you can get things delivered to you in 1 or 2 days. And to me, that is a huge thing, because I have a habit of waiting for the last minute to check my inventory and things like that. So the fact that I can get these in, Prime 2 days or less is a huge plus for me. The price point is important, but it is not a deal breaker for me. I'm willing to pay much more for a cartridge if I like it, but if I can get something that I really like for a price that I really like, it's an even bigger win. So when I'm looking at cartridges, one of the biggest things that I'm looking for is that they are made with good quality products, that the plastics and things like that are all of good quality. The needle for, the metal being used in the needle, of course, good quality, and that they have consistent quality. So if I'm looping my needles and out of every box I'm getting 2 or 3, bent or burred needles or something like that, then that's not a good quality product to me. I've been using these a very long time and I have found very, very few defective needles in that time. Another big thing that I look for is that they have a membrane, that they're safe to use. So there are cheap cartridges out there that either do not have a membrane or they don't have stabilization in the cartridge, and that is so important, especially for permanent makeup work, because our lines need to be precise, they need to be straight and smooth and even, and we can't have a cartridge that does not have stabilization in it, because then your needle is going to be wiggling all over, and that is not helpful. So again, I'm looking for quality and safety, the cartridge membrane and the stabilization, the quality of the cartridge itself. And then after that are the other things like the price point and how fast can I get to them. And for me, Big Wasp meets all of those requirements, and so I've been a big fan for a long time. So let's take a look here. This is their 1st generation. So these were white box 1st generation needles, and this is what the cartridge looks like. So these cartridges in the 1st generation were, they're white, they're opaque, and to me they were a little thicker, a little more clunky than what we see in the later iterations. Now, I don't have a 2nd generation box, but I do have a 3rd generation box, which is this one here. And so in this one, the cartridge style has changed a little bit. It's still the same basic shape and housing, but you can see that now they are clear, and like this one has a little bit of kind of like an amber, smoky amber to it, and this one is a little bit of a smoky gray, but they are translucent. You can see through them, and they are, in my opinion, a little bit thinner of a cartridge. And then the 4th generation, which are these here. Now these ones were cool because these all came in clear packaging, or clear cartridges, and I really like that. I like to be able to see through the cartridge. I want to see the needle, I want to see the pigment, all of that. And what these also have is that if you notice, the box is purple and the top here is purple, and so this is a box of magnums. All of the magnums are purple. All the other colors, like shaders, liners, they all have different color coding, and it's not a deal breaker, of course, but it's important if you're using multiple needles. So if you're the type of person that uses multiple needles in your piece, having that color coding makes it a little easier to identify the cartridge, just at a quick glance. But for permanent makeup, we're not often using more than 1 or 2 different types of needles. So again, not a deal breaker, but a nice little feature. So now the latest iteration of their cartridges is this is their 5th generation, and it is called the Energy Cartridge, and it is a completely new design. So if we look back here, you can see this is an entirely new design for the cartridge. It has this rubber piece here that has the finger ledge. The tip is much slimmer. It is a translucent design. It is very slim, and it does have this little beveled edge. I don't know if you can see there. It has this little beveled edge right there, which I absolutely love. I don't like a flush tip. And so this cartridge so far has been my favorite iteration of all of the Big Wasp cartridges. I'm super excited about it, and I have a whole bunch of them here that we're going to open and play around with. So let's hit the practice pad and see how these perform. So for this, I'm using the Perma Pen, which is made by Microbrew and available on our website at teachmepmu.com in the shop. This is just a wireless battery packed. You can do this machine wired. It has an RCA input. If you want to do it wired, this is just a wireless battery. So I'm at 5.5. So we have a variety of needles to play around with today. So let's start with the round liner. This is a 3 round liner, and it is a 0.8, which is a 0.25 millimeter. So you can see the tip here is not only very slender, it's thin, it's slender. I love that, but let's get real close up here. Do you see how there is like a little cutout right here? The front has that. The front has that cutout, so that is really lovely. There used to be a diamond tip. Some companies still make the diamond tip. I love a diamond tip, needle tip, and so this is like a nice compromise for that there. And then that way you can still see the tip of your needle and it's not flush. So these will fit in any standard cartridge size machine. And I'm just going to bring the needle out a little bit so that we can really see it. These cartridges do not make noise, which is great. Some cartridges that I've used are really noisy. So I'm going to bring this up here so that we can kind of watch it suck up into here. So, and there you go. It does have like a decent pigment load. It does hold quite a bit of pigment, so that's great right there. And so again, this is the 3 liner, and I'm just going to play around with it a little bit. And you see we're not getting any pigment flow here, so let me bring this down a little bit. And there you go. So oftentimes if you have your needle too far out, especially with these long skinny tips, you will not get any pigment flowing down the needle, and so you do have to bring it in a little bit. And again, this is a great type of tip for that because you can still see the front of the needle in that curve cutout, and it doesn't have to be super far out of the cartridge. I'm just using a little bit of Vaseline. If you don't know this trick, the more that you wipe these practice pads, the worse that they get. And so if you just put a little bit of oil or Vaseline on it, it will wipe a lot cleaner. And so you can see here, I was barely touching the pad. I was really not making a lot of noise. You know, this is a metal tray, so if I go very deep or too hard with it, you're gonna really hear it hit the table. And I barely touched it, and we got a lot of pigment implantation here. It goes in nice and smooth, really nice. And again, I'm only set on 5.5 volts here. So let's just do like a nice quick little line right there. And again, barely touching the skin, and nice, smooth, straight line. Fabulous. So that was the 3RL. Let's now move to the 5RL. Again, this is a 08. Again, the needle hang is in the same space. And again, you can hear I am barely touching the skin here, and I'm moving fairly fast. Look at all that implantation, barely touching the skin with it, and it's just coming down the needle beautifully. So again, let's a nice soft line. Really easy pigment implantation with these. That's one of the things I really love about this needle. I really, oh, I just shot that across the room. Okay. So this is going to be the 7RL now. And this is again, 08. So again, the thinner the diameter on the needle, the tighter, right? Because like if these are the needles, a shader is going to be more spaced out, where a liner is going to be more tight. So if you've got a very small needle diameter, you're going to really be able to get a nice sharp tight line in there. So a 0.8 needle diameter on a 7RL is going to be a smaller needle, a smaller line than you would get if you had a larger configuration. So again, I'm staying with about the same needle hang. We don't need much because we can see it in that cutout. And again, this is the 7RL. Look at the pixelation on that. Really nice. And just as a reminder, in the end, you can tattoo with a toothpick if you are really good at it. The tools that you use, the pigment that you use, all of that is important, and you want to make sure that you have good quality tools that you're using, products and tools. But in the end, the best products in the world aren't any good in the hands of an unskilled artist, and the lowest quality things can do great work in the hands of a very skilled artist as well. And we see that like in prison tattoos and things like that. They're not using the best of the best, and yet I've seen some really amazing work come out of jail. So I don't want you to feel like, oh, well, look at the performance of these needles, this is beautiful, and then you get them in your own hands and you're not experiencing the same performance. You know, practice and you know, getting into a routine, getting into a nice motion, having a rhythm, all of those things are super important. Your technique is half the battle. But as we can see, the 7 RL implanted pigment really nicely. Let's see what that looks like as a line. And there you go. So now let's switch over to the shaders. So this one is a 3RS, and we're back up to the 12 diameter. So this is going to be a shader with 3 needles in the configuration, and these are 12 diameter, which is a 0.40. And again, now we were at a 3 round liner. This is now going to be the 3 shader. All right, so of course we see a major difference here, right? So this was a 3 liner, and it was the 08 diameter needles. So these are going to be finer tip needles on a you know, a tight configuration. These are larger diameter needles in a wider configuration, and we can absolutely see the difference there. So let's give this a little line. And again, you can really see the difference between the two here. So now we're going to jump to the 7RS. And like, we're still on 5.5. Everything is the same. We're just changing the needles out. And this is the 5 shader, or I'm sorry, this is the 7 shader. So we're going to go over here. And I'm just barely touching. I'm using a very fast pendulum hand movement. And so you can see here, this was the 7 liner in the 08 diameter. This is the 7 shader in the 12 diameter. Let's give this a little line. Now let's flip over to the curved magnums or round magnums. So this is 10. So these were 08s, these were 12s, and this is 10. So this is kind of in the middle diameter wise, and this is a 5 magnum. And some companies will call a curved magnum CM a curved magnum, some will call it an RM, a round magnum, but it's the same thing. So again, we see in the cartridge, we've got the cutout in the front there, and this is the needle. I like to work with my magnums pretty close to the back of the cartridge there. You can see how much pigment gets sucked up into there. It's a little hard to see. It's a dark cartridge. We'll come over here. So this is going to be the 5. And again, I'm just sticking with a little pendulum motion because we don't typically use magnums to do like solid, real solid fill. So I'm just doing a little pendulum. You can see that pixelation going. I don't typically move this fast when I'm doing this, but I just want to show you that even with a fairly low speed or fairly low voltage and a very fast hand movement, I'm not tearing up the skin. It's nice and soft. I'm getting a ton of pigment implantation. As you can see, I'm still getting pixelation over here where I was lighter in my saturation. I'm getting a ton of pigment implantation over here where I have darker saturation. Overall, the whole thing is going in really smoothly, and all of these, as fast as I'm moving, they're all nice and smooth, no damage into the skin. So I'm going to hold this way so you can see the needle marks that way, and I'm going to turn it on to an angle so you can see the needle marks that way. Now let's take a look at the 9 Magnum. Get this out. So again, this is a 9 Magnum. These are 0.10 or 10 diameter needles. And it's a round Magnum as well. Just a little drop like that. If I put a lot of space in between my strokes, you could see that there's quite a bit of pixelation going, if this is a technique that you like using. So I'll keep this loose over here, and then I'll just sort of get a little more saturated over here. Again, I can't stress enough how little I am hitting the skin here. Here I went even less because aside from it being a larger needle configuration, I was just not really concentrating on the saturation and things. But you can see it fills in the space very, very quickly. So if we needed to kind of bring this saturation up here, we can kind of cross hatch a little bit. See how that goes. I typically don't use a 9 Magnum this way. It's not my technique of choice for a larger Magnum like this. Normally I would be using this, let's say, in the lips, and I would be using a more traditional technique for that. But let's show the needle marks. And it goes sideways. And there we go. So we've looked at 7 different needle groupings in liners, shaders, and in different diameters as well. I used the same machine, the same speed, or the same voltage rather, on the power supply, and you can see the results here for all of those. And again, even with the larger needle groupings, you can see these are really, look how soft that is. There's no, like the skin's not, you know, picking up in there. It's not snagging. This is all smooth. You can see how nice and tight those lines are when we use the Magnum sideways. And then here, these were the liners and these are the shaders. And again, nice and smooth. We don't see any real damage in the skin there. So it's a lot of pigment implantation without much damage and fairly easy to get it in. So again, these are Big Wasp needle cartridges. This is their new generation needle. They're called the Energy Needle. You can find them on Amazon, and they come in a variety of different shapes, sizes, configurations, tapers, all of that. So thank you so much to Big Wasp.